Have you ever come across a house encircled by a medieval-style moat right in the heart of a modern city? My HOA President, Linda, outlawed all fences because she demanded an unobstructed view into my personal life. But when she had my wall torn down, she had no idea she was unleashing something far worse. I swapped my fence for a deep water trench and stocked it with dangerous predators. Last night, she attempted to cross it, and let's just say she ended up taking a very unexpected swim. Be sure to subscribe to the channel right now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming videos. It all began when Linda decided that my privacy violated community regulations. I had installed a beautiful wooden fence to keep my dog secure and prevent her from snooping, but Linda despised it. She argued that it disrupted the neighborhood's visual harmony. One morning, I woke to the roar of chainsaws. I rushed outside and saw a construction crew literally cutting my fence in half. Linda stood there holding a clipboard, wearing a smug smile. She told me, according to new bylaws approved yesterday, no vertical structures taller than 2 feet are permitted. I was livid. Without the fence, my yard turned into her personal walkway. She began using my lawn as a shortcut to reach the mailbox. She would stroll right past my living room window, stop, and peer inside to see what I was watching on TV. It was disturbing. She even allowed her irritating little poodle to relieve itself right on my front porch and didn't bother cleaning it up. When I confronted her about it, she shrugged and said, "It's open space now. Alex, get used to it." I felt completely exposed inside my own home. I couldn't even host a barbecue in my backyard without her wandering over to criticize how I was grilling. She started bringing potential homebuyers onto my lawn, pointing around to show them how spacious the neighborhood was, treating my property like a display model. I knew I couldn't put up another wall, or she'd just tear it down again and fine me thousands of dollars. I needed a barrier that wasn't considered a structure. I needed something that would physically stop her while still technically following her ridiculous rules. That's when I remembered a history documentary I once watched about castles. If you can't build upward, you build downward. I spent the entire night combing through the HOA rulebook, searching for words like hole or trench. The rules were extremely detailed about vertical structures, such as walls, hedges, and fences, but they said absolutely nothing about water features or ponds. In fact, the HOA actively encouraged eco-friendly water features to attract birds. That was my golden ticket. I rented a mini excavator the very next morning. Linda watched from her window, looking confused but not stopping me. I dug a 4-foot-deep, 5-foot-wide trench around the entire perimeter of my front yard. It looked like a construction site, but technically it was a koi pond. I lined it with heavy-duty black plastic and filled it using my garden hose. My house was now essentially an island. To reach my front door, I built a small wooden plank that I could pull in at night, a literal drawbridge. But I knew water by itself wouldn't be enough to stop Linda. She was stubborn enough to trudge through mud if it meant catching me breaking some rule. I needed a deterrent, something intimidating. I couldn't put real alligators in there. Obviously, that would be illegal. So I went online and ordered 3 high-end remote-controlled alligator heads. These things look horrifyingly realistic, with reflective eyes and textured, scaly skin. I also installed a hidden underwater pump to make the water ripple ominously, creating the illusion that something massive was moving beneath the surface. I set the gator heads floating in the moat and tested the remote. They slid silently across the water. It was perfect. I placed a small sign that read, "Caution, Wildlife Sanctuary." It wasn't a lie. Frogs had already started moving in. Now all I had to do was wait for the queen of the HOA to try invading my territory again. I didn't have to wait long. 2 nights later, I spotted the familiar beam of a flashlight slicing through my front yard. I was sitting in the dark with my drawbridge pulled up, gripping the remote control for the gators. Linda marched right up to the edge of the moat. She stopped, looking confused. She had clearly expected to walk straight up to my window, like always. She shined her flashlight across the water. "What on earth is this?" I heard her mutter. She dipped her foot in to test it. She was actually planning to jump across. She stepped back to get a running start. That was my moment. As she prepared to leap, I nudged the joystick on my remote. The 3 alligator heads, which had been hiding beneath the lily pads, suddenly surged toward her. I pressed a button that made the gators' mouths snap open and shut, a special feature of the deluxe model. Linda froze mid-step. Her flashlight beam caught the glowing yellow eyes of the mechanical beast gliding rapidly toward her ankles. She screamed, "Gators, help!" and spun around to run, but she lost her footing on the slick mud bank. With a loud splash, she fell face first into a muddy trench. IT wasn't deep enough to drown her, but it was deep enough to leave her completely soaked. She thrashed around in the muddy water, flailing at the toy alligators and screaming like she was trapped in a horror movie. "Get them off me! They're eating me!" she shouted, slapping at a plastic gator head bobbing beside her. I flipped on the porch lights and stepped outside, putting on a look of concern. "Linda, are you swimming in my pond?" She scrambled out of the moat, coated in slime, mud, and algae. She looked like something straight out of a swamp. She didn't even pause to catch her breath. Instead, she immediately dialed 911, screaming that I had wild beasts in my yard. When the police arrived, they approached with their hands on their holsters, clearly expecting a dangerous animal situation. Linda was shivering, pointing wildly at the moat. "He has alligators. They attacked me. Arrest him for attempted murder," she yelled. One of the officers shined his spotlight into the water and spotted an alligator head floating near the edge. He stiffened for a moment. I calmly walked over, picked up the remote, and steered the alligator boat right up to the officer's boots. Then I reached down and lifted the plastic toy out of the water. "Officer, it's a remote-controlled boat. I collect them." The officer looked at the toy, then at Linda, and suddenly burst out laughing. "Ma'am, you called 911 over a toy." Linda's face turned bright red. But the trench. That's illegal," she protested. The officer shook his head. "It's a water feature on private property, ma'am. Why were you trying to cross it at night?" That's when he realized she had been trespassing. He told her, "Ma'am, you can't just walk onto someone else's property and fall into their pond." He wrote her a ticket for misuse of emergency services and warned her to stay off my island. Linda had to walk back to her house, squishing with every step, while neighbors cheered from their windows. I still have the moat. The birds love it. And Linda hasn't set a single foot in my yard since. I guess she finally learned that even without a fence, my house is a fortress. If you enjoyed seeing the moat lady get soaked, hit that like button and subscribe for more revenge stories.